I beat an obby so difficult that it was thought to be humanly impossible when it was originally built. Over the course of 15 live streams, I pushed myself to conquer this lengthy and extremely punishing challenge, and I succeeded. Welcome to Tower of Generation Failure. Floor 1 is a short floor in comparison to the rest of them, serving as an introduction to the first half of the tower. It introduces something very prevalent in the first half, sphere jumps. Jumping off spheres works differently than most platforms. Instead of jumping off sideways, which makes your foot sink in, losing you a bunch of speed initially, it's ideal to jump off forwards and then activate shift lock midair if needed. Besides that, this head hitter and this conveyor jump are the trickiest jumps on the floor, which only get consistent with tons of repetition. Also, keep in mind slightly darker parts have no collision throughout the tower. Floor 2 is longer than Floor 1, but also more enjoyable as it doesn't have any inconsistent jumps like the two I mentioned on 1. The hardest part of this floor for me at first was this time section, but it's pretty lenient and gets consistent quickly. Other notable jumps include the jump onto this truss and this cylinder ladder flick. Floor 3 is the lengthiest and hardest floor yet. For starters, you have to purposely ledge grab the sphere and climb down to reach the next platform. Sometimes the sphere shoves you off for no apparent reason. I never even found out how to be 100% consistent at this when I beat the tower. The next hard part starts when you activate this button. You have to backtrack and do a harder version of the jumps you just did. But hey, at least if you fail, the button stays pressed. These jumps are honestly pretty long, but usually you'll save yourself near the start of 3. After that, you'll make your way to this button, which activates new platforms, allowing you to further progress through the floor. Now, you can either choose this very difficult path that has greater punishment for failing, or you can redo the first bit of Floor 3's gameplay. I always choose the second option. Then once you do these few long jumps, you are met with the first major roadblock of the tower, Floor 3 outside. Failing this will of course send you back to the bottom, where you can then corner flip back in and start from Floor 1. The reason why this outside section is such a challenge is mainly because of these two jumps. There's not much strategy to them other than third person versus first person, which is more preference than anything. You have to build up muscle memory for these jumps, which may take multiple days or weeks. Personally, it only took me a few days. I found little trouble with any of the other jumps on this outside, which is great because it barely even felt like a roadblock for me. For example, this cylinder wrap, which others found pretty tricky, is honestly easy if you set it up backwards. Then there's some easier gameplay to end it off and we're on to Floor 4. This floor starts off with an annoying low ceiling section, which stops you from being able to jump across any of these gaps. Then there's this section where you have to grab 2 buttons. Once pressed, forcing you to redo the same gameplay, but each time it becomes slightly harder. Once past that, you are introduced to the first bit of gameplay that is over an instant death pit. The jumps aren't too bad, thankfully. I mean, surely this is a gimmick that will be used sparingly throughout the tower. Anyways, the next bit of gameplay isn't anything special, until you get to this jump. You have to wrap around and fit in between this tight gap, while also curving around to the right a bit to land on the platform. It's definitely the hardest jump on the whole floor, but it does get consistent eventually with enough practice. The rest of 4 doesn't have anything special either, so time for Floor 5. This floor is considered a break floor, consisting of a button hunt and is where the name and theme of this tower starts to become apparent. There are a total of 8 buttons scattered across this floor, 6 of them being hidden. All of them must be pressed in order for the wall at the end of 5 to be deactivated, allowing you to progress to Floor 6. Thankfully, with a bit of memorization and the help of a guide, locating all the buttons shouldn't be a challenge. Besides that, the climb up to the cylinder and this long jump around the wall were the hardest jumps for me to get consistent at. Floor 6 is the personal best of many who have attempted this tower, and for good reason. This floor throws some slanted jumps at you, which just like sphere jumps need to be treated differently. You should jump off sideways, however, you'll have to delay your jump an extra amount, which is a whole other thing you need to ingrain into your muscle memory. Besides all the advanced wraparounds thrown in, this conveyor jump also stumped me for a while. Doing it sideways helps a lot, and you have to react to the conveyor pushing you back slightly different amounts, which is just random. Then there's the first mini outside section. Falling here means you have to backtrack to the end of 4. The first wraparound in particular is the second hardest jump on the floor, requiring pure muscle memory. The second jump is honestly harder than it looks because sometimes you won't climb onto the ledge for seemingly no reason, but still isn't nearly as bad as the first jump. Then you get teleported back inside, where you then have to do more wraparounds, each one being uniquely challenging, but nothing crazy. Past that, you have to grab onto the slider dangling over the outside, and fall down to the platform below, and jump back inside. Here is a segment of what I like to call claustrophobic gameplay. During the first portion you can't fall, but then there's some ladder jumps. The first one is easy to accidentally walk off while trying to grab, and the second one is pretty tedious. Mind you, looking too far to the right while on the ladder can cause you to slope off once you jump. Then you get a sharp break when you are then teleported to the hardest jump in the entire tower, the 4-stud stick out. Anyone experienced that obbies might not think that this is that hard initially, but when adding in the fact that you have to squeeze in between a very tight gap once wrapping around the wall, it turns this into a very inconsistent jump. Once you pass it, you have a very good chance of making it to floor 7. The sketchiest parts left are these slope jumps and this time section, however they aren't that difficult. I myself only had 3 or 4 fails past the 4-stud stick out for reference. Floor 7 is the longest floor of the entire tower, with there being 7 buttons requiring you to complete 7 challenges to reach them. The good news is that only 3 of the challenges have portions of gameplay where you can lose progress. The bad news is those parts are either over an outside or over intentional softlock pit. The first unsafe challenge starts once you reach the slider flip. This is probably the hardest out of the 3, which is why I always get out of the way first so that I'm not building up nerves. You have to flick around this wall and grab onto another ladder, then do a couple jumps outwards to avoid hitting your head, and boom, first challenge complete. The second unsafe challenge spawns you right onto a jump height modifier which lowers it by a bunch. Luckily only 4 of these jumps land you into a softlock pit, but failing anything after them means you have to redo these jumps, which isn't ideal. Once you pass the cylinder wrap, you're pretty much home free and have passed the second challenge. The final unsafe challenge is by far the easiest, only having 1 jump that can land you in a softlock pit. Stepping on this teleporter takes you past the last unsafe jump on 7, meaning we're guaranteed to make it to floor 8 at this point. Just don't get flung off the ledge. The rest of this floor is quite a drag to play through, which means your endurance will start to be tested. We can pretty much skip the rest of this floor and move on to floor 8. Floor 8 is a pivotal point in the tower. Remember the gameplay over instant death pits on floor 4 and 5? Well, this floor brings that back, but with much harder jumps this time and for half the floor. To spice things up, the gameplay style has changed yet again to include multiple elevator jumps. Elevators simply bounce you up and down, each one at differing heights. Jumping has no effect on how high you bounce. There's strict timing for when you have to start holding the movement key. Start moving too early, it's like walking off a platform. Move too late and you won't cover enough distance. Even once you pass those, you have 2 tricky wraparounds to tackle. But if you can manage that, you'll get a 30-second break with this bullet hell section. You'll easily live as long as you focus on dodging the big bullets, plus healing items help of course, but I honestly didn't even need them. The second half of 8 is easier, but failing it means you fall back down to 7 and have to redo the first half of 8. All in all, a short yet very punishing and difficult floor. Floor 9 off the bat begins with probably the most infamous outside section in any tower, giving you no chance to catch your breath from what you just endured on 8. It starts with a long jump and climbing down to grab this truss to jump to one across from you. Climbing back up, you have to jump across this wall to grab onto another truss and flick off it. You have a moment to catch your breath if you want, and then you have to face a timed section. An elevator launches you over to a button, which then spawns in a bunch of platforms that disappear after exactly 25 seconds. You can save yourself by jumping down to the trident if you're about to run out of time at the end, but failing anything else will surely lead to your doom. Unfortunately, I went too high up on the truss when trying to bounce off it and fell down to floor 1. At this point I was beyond discouraged. I already had 4 fails on floor 9. That just added to the tally in a way that's nearly unavoidable. Something in me told me to keep going. that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. I still had all my button progress throughout the tower, meaning I wouldn't have to redo floor 7 if I reached it. So I did just that, and I even passed floor 8, giving me another chance on 9 outside, where I got back to the trust jump I had failed an hour ago. But this time, I got it. There's not much left after that time section, with there being a long jump and 2 wraparounds, the last one being a bit tricky. Jumping into the elevator will pull you into 9 inside. As long as you don't get caught on any of the kill brick walls, then we've officially passed 9 outside. We are then rewarded with a short break, as there's no punishment for failing any of these jumps. Once you reach this point, the jumps are over an instant death pit again. This jump is surprisingly long, which caught me off guard in one of my runs. The rest of the gameplay is fairly trivial, until you need to grab this button. This wraparound and this slanted wraparound especially are very easy to mess up, and the worst part is you have to do them twice. Grabbing the button is scary too, as you need to jump outwards and land back on the platform you just jumped off of. Managing to survive that leaves us with one last jump until we reach floor 10, the final floor of the tower. Floor 10 is divided by walls, splitting it into 4 sides. Once we pass the first side, the others have no punishment for failing, as there's a floor beneath them. Fortunately, we can fall back to 9 inside if we fail the first side of 10, meaning we'd have to redo the gameplay over the instant death pit again, minus the part where we have to grab the button to remove the wall. Thankfully, floor 10 doesn't throw any super hard jumps at us, although that doesn't mean we should underestimate it. The first tough one requires you to snake in between these 2 walls, and is quite a tight jump. Then this wraparound right after is also very long, and if you get caught by the wall, you're basically guaranteed to fall down to 9. Next you have to snake through this gap in the wall. Uh-oh, we failed it. Good news is I haven't fallen down to 9 yet. Bad news is I have to redo the 2 hard jumps I just mentioned. Nice, I clutched it up. I think you can only imagine the nerves I'm experiencing at this point since I'm so close to victory. There's realistically only one more hard jump left on the tower that stands between me and the win pad. 2 hours into my run. Will I make it or will I face defeat? Yep, I did it. All that's left for me to do is finish the gameplay of the last 3 sides of the tower, home free. That was my journey through Tower of Generation Failure. I hope you enjoyed.